Lethbridge, Alberta, home of the Lost Soul Ultra, the toughest race on the prairies. This race may be held in the prairies, but even veteran mountain souls have lost their way and failed to finish. The race course consists of steep, relentless, and unending hills. The first few hills lull the racer into a sense of confidence, while the later hills crush spirits and end dreams. What's the reward for finishing one of the three distances? 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers, or 100 miles? A rock from the river valley of the Oldman River. A prize of epic proportions for an epic accomplishment. Hand-picked, crafted, and personally blasted with the runner's finishing time. No other trail running race can come close to matching these special awards. These rocks symbolize perseverance, struggle, hard work, and success for each and every runner who receives one. This is the story of the Lost Soul Rocks.
Well, what we're doing is a labor of love. We've done it every year for the last number of years for the Lost Soul Ultra. It's the coveted rock that the participants get after they've completed the race. And so what we do is we go to toll strips, rock piles, and we hunt through the rock piles for the perfect rock. Every rock is picked with loving care and selected based on quality features that we're in search of. And so it's got to be of a certain size and texture, and also a flat-sided surface, at least on one of the sides.
And why do you need that?
Well, in order to have a good blast, the rock needs to have a certain quality to it. And so what we do is we search for that rock. When we find it, then we throw it off the pile onto the ground, and then from there it gets loaded up into the truck and home it goes. And so what we need is we need to get the perfect shape rock with the characteristics that we're looking for, so that when we blast it and we finally put that person's name and finishing time on it, it's going to be a coveted award. Well, we're going to be picking about 294 for this year's race. It looks as though right now we're looking at about 275 participants, 3.5 weeks to get them ready for the initial blast. And that's where we put the first stencil on, which is basically the race and the race distance. And we prepare the rock for blasting. Once all the rocks are stenciled up, after about 3.5 weeks, then what we do is we transfer them down to the blast site and we start blasting. And the blast this year will probably take in excess of a week. And that's basically 8 hours a day for 5-6 days. Collected about 294 rocks from toll strips, handled them about 3 times in order to get them here. And what we do now is these rocks have been aging since the middle of July. We want to make sure that they're at their prime, ready for the next phase of the operation, and that's where we actually put the mask on the rocks. And we're going to show you how we do that. So right now the rocks are dirty. Each one of them has to have a bit of a shower before we get a chance to do anything with them. Now we've got a nice clean rock to work with. Now it goes to the next phase of the operation, and that's where we put the rubber stencil on. And so basically what we're going to do, pick a nice spot for the stencil to go on the rock.
Okay, you want to put the stencil on?
So you want to put the stencil on the right way up. It'd be terrible to put it upside down. And you want to kind of find a nice position so that when you put the person's name and their finishing time on the rock, everything kind of looks nicely positioned and located on the rock. Press it down And then you take your weapon of choice and you start the process of weeding the rock. And so what you're doing is you're pulling out the areas of the rock that are going to get blasted. Protects the area that's going to be hit directly with the sandblasting, because the sandblasting won't go through the Gorilla Tape, but it will go through the duct tape. And so if you didn't have the Gorilla Tape on, then you would end up with these lovely little lines on the rock, right where the mask ends. And so you want to make sure that that's well protected. And this one is now ready to go. At this point, this rock has now been handled an additional 5 times. So since we picked it up at Toll Strips, it's now been handled 8 times. And he's going to go in a row with all of his buddies. These are all 100K rocks that we've got here, and those are the 100 miles that we've done so far, and this is what we've got done so far for the 50Ks. And so right now these guys are going to be guarding the garage until the early part of September. So here we are at the blast site where we do the first blast of the rocks. So what we do is the night before we load up the little trailer with about 60 rocks, however many we can fit on. And that's going to be our project for the one day, is to get those rocks blasted and painted and hopefully stripped and put away into the little storage shed. And so what we do is we bring them all down here to the site, and then prior to putting them up on the shelf for blasting, we whack them with the rubber mallet just to make sure the mask is nice and tight against the rock. We put them up there. We can do about 20 or so at a time on the bench, and then we start blasting away. And hopefully there's no hiccups with the blaster. Typically every year there is. And so as we blast, you want to be looking for any little bits of the mask that pop off, such as the middle of the A's or anything that starts to lift, in which case then you stop blasting that one and you move on to the next one, and you get all 20 of them done or so, and then you bring them over for painting. It's a fairly quick job to paint them all. The paint dries really quick. It is a monument paint, so it's basically going to be there forever. And from painting, then they get stacked alongside the paint area where they'll dry, and then they get carried over to where we strip the mask off, and we pull out the little bits on the inside that haven't been blasted, and then the rock is put away and it's ready for Saturday when we put the names and the finishing times on them all. We bring a trailer with the rocks down, and of course this year with the 50K starting on the Friday, we're going to have hopefully 50 or so rocks that are inside the building overnight, so they're nice and warm, because the temperature does have a bit of an effect on the rock blasting procedure. And so you want the rocks to be fairly warm, and so what we do is we'll haul down 50 or so rocks so they're nice and ready for us. And then what we do is we put their finishing name or their finishing time and their name on the rock, and then every other part of the rock that has already been blasted or doesn't need to be blasted gets wrapped with rubber and tape again. And from that point, then they're hauled out to where we'll be blasting, which is next to the building. And then they get painted, and then they get stripped again. They get checked for detail, and then cleaned up and put on the trailer and taken to the lodge that night. And I expect that we'll still be at it between 8 and 9 Saturday night. So we have to get them all done. There have been times in the past where we've had headlights of vehicles shining on so that we can see what we're doing when we're blasting and painting. It's always one of those situations where you hope you don't get into that, and it has got better over the last couple of years. A lot of it depends on when that last person crosses the finish line, and as long as they made it through the checkpoints on time, then we have to wait for them to actually finish within the qualifying time.
Good. Okay.